They want to become like U.S. Steel. You know what I mean, George? They didn't want to be out there. But,
every mob guy I've ever talked to, you ask them about like the movie The Godfather, and they say they like the movie, they like the portrayal, but they all say there's nothing like that. It was never like that.
It's a very entertaining movie. I enjoy it. Very entertaining, but that's what it is. All right? I find Warner Brothers cartoons to be very entertaining too, George. You know what I'm saying? All right? But we all know I'm a FUD isn't real, right? Okay.
Well, you just crushed me with that news there.
Yeah, I bet I did.
So if your life,
okay, go ahead.
I mentioned in the introduction that your life could read like a Scorsese movie. Is that right? And if so, which one?
Which one could it? Well, it would be something accurate, which I found to be accurate, really. And in fact, the first time I saw it, I guess it's I don't know, it must have been in the '80s. First time I saw it, I said, "Wow!" I said, "This is like." They must have been talking to somebody when they made this movie because a lot of the stuff in there was real.
Which
and they
one?
were talking to somebody. It was Henry Hill, and it was the movie was Goodfellas. It was originally based on the book Wise Guy by Nicholas Pileggi, which I read the book too. And the reason that they called it Goodfellas too, and they didn't call the movie Wise Guy, is because at that time there was a comedy out with Joe Piscopo and Danny DeVito called Wise Guys, and they didn't want it to, they didn't want to use the name again, so they changed the name to Goodfellas.
Let's go back to this story that you told me one time about how you came to know Crazy Joe Gallo, and I guess you and another guy did a favor. Tell me that story.
I was a kid, growing up in Brooklyn. That was in Red Hook, and you were kids. You went and you got their coffee for them. You sort of looked up to these guys. These guys had a lot of flash about them, and you sort of wanted to be a part of what they were, and you were a kid. You're growing up, and and they were mysterious at the time, and and they always dressed flashy, and they had the best cars, So you'd wind up going for coffee for them. You get the newspaper for them. It started out like that, and pretty soon they trusted you more and more, and then you wound up parking their cars for them and things like that, And anything they needed little things done. Go send somebody a message. Or go get this guy. I want to talk to this guy. Run an errand, do this. That's how it starts. And then you go into other things. It's
Wasn't there some story about a girl in the neighborhood who got raped or assaulted in some way, and Crazy Joe Gallo got involved?
Oh yeah, that was this guy Mario's daughter. Yeah. But they always, that's one thing. These guys may have been. I'm not justifying them. Not justifying me. So I'm a big boy. I know what I was and what I did. And these guys too, the same thing. They were bad guys in a lot of ways, as far as the public is concerned. But in a lot of ways, the old timers, they had certain morals that they lived by, certain rules that they lived by. And they always kept. Any block like where Joey had his club. The block was pristine. There were flowers around the trees. They were their own sanitation. They kept the streets cleaned. I seen a guy get a beating one time for throwing a gum wrapper on the street. He didn't know anybody. He was just walking down the street. And not only get a beating, they made him eat the gum wrapper, though. I've seen that, though. And they kept it, not saying it's right what they did, but there was never any nonsense on you get 2 blocks there that, there were block parties every summer. That they threw. They were generous like that, And they took care of the neighborhood, and they took care of the people in the neighborhood. And one thing they taught you growing up is, at that time, okay, now we're going back, at that time when I was growing up, that's in the 60s. So at that time they taught you, to have respect. If you took a girl out from the neighborhood, you better make sure that when you took her home, you walked her up to her door. You didn't just let her get out of the car. You opened the door for her. They taught you that. They taught you what to do. So in that way, they instilled a lot of good things in you that way. The other things, well, it came with the territory. But they did instill some good things. And it was this, anytime something happened, it applied. Well, Joey, he had a reputation for being nuts, and he was a little bit. But he had certain morals for a nut job. And it was, if anybody hurt anybody, he didn't like to see weaker people hurt. He didn't like any of that stuff, like especially kids. He liked kids, he used to get out and play stickball with you in the street, whatever. And if anything happened to anybody in the neighborhood, well, anyway, just make a long story short, this girl, she wound up meeting this yuppie-duppie from Wall Street. all right, because she worked in Manhattan, too. And she wound up going out with this guy. All right, the guy came, he picked her up at the house, the whole bit. He took her out. And then at the end of the night, he expected her to give it up, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do.
And she wasn't giving it up. She held on to it. And because of that, she wound up getting up. Oh, please, she had teeth knocked out. She had her jaw broken. She had the bone under her eye socket collapsed. I mean, she took a hell of a beat. And she came home like that. Came home on the subway like that. And, like halfway crawled up the street to home. And her father took her to the hospital and everything else. I want to know what happened. And this, you know, and then, you know, Joey got wind of it. The old man went to see him. And, you know, he really got pissed off. He really got pissed off, and he was, like, you know, really proud of the girl, too, that she didn't give it up to this mutt. So, you know, with that, he got more angry, and then he grabbed a couple of guys off the street, you know, guys that were, you know, just barely out of their teens. He grabbed them and he said, listen, you two guys, he said, I'll tell you what. You see this guy, we know where he works. I want you to go down there, downtown, into the city. I want you to lay for the guy, all right? When you find him, I don't care how long it takes, day, 2 days, 3 days, make sure you grab him right, you bring him back here to me. And if you don't get him, don't you two guys come back here. So that was like a mission for these two guys. So, and they went on. It took the better part of a week before they finally could catch. They saw him a couple of times, but before they could finally, you know, get him right. You know what I mean? Where you would get no interference from the general public, because you never really wanted that, you know. And so they finally grabbed the guy, they yoked him, they threw him in the trunk, you know. And, you know, he was in there banging around, screaming all the way over the Brooklyn Bridge. The guy was, you know, he was in there very animated in the back trunk. And when they finally got him to down to President Street, you know, they took him into the club. Now, Joey, Joey kept a cat, you know, not your normal cat.
Not a house cat.
Like
right.
a 300-pound cat. It was like a mountain lion that he acquired somewhere, you know.
He had this in a cage or something?
I'm sorry?
He had it in a cage?
He had it in a cage in the basement of the club, yeah. He had it in a cage. And all the time that these guys were laying for this guy, he didn't feed this cat. This cat used to eat like 3, 4, 5 roast beefs a week, whole roast beefs. And he didn't feed the cat. He gave the cat like little tidbits, you know, like little strips of meat. He kept the cat very hungry, you know, and very agitated still. And anyway, when they brought this guy, they grabbed him out of the car and just dragged him into the place. And, you know, they dragged him down the stairs and bounced his head a few times on the downstairs. And when he got down there, they straightened him up, you know. By this time, he was pretty scared already because he already, you know, you could see that he urinated in his pants, you know, which was, you know. But he was crying like a baby. And Joey said to him, he says, you did this to this girl, you did, you know, the guy said, you know. And he asked him, he says, which hand did you do this with? So the guy, he says, which hand did you do it with? So the guy held up his right hand. And Joey says, I tell you what, you're going to put your hand in that cage. You don't put your hand in that cage. Look around, because this is the last place you're ever going to see, and my face is the last face you're ever going to see. So the guy, you know, after a few moments, I guess, you know, he knew it was real, because Joey had these crazy eyes. If anybody that knew Joey Gallo would know. I mean, the guy had really nutball eyes. And you knew he was serious when he was talking to you. Even if you didn't know him, you knew he was serious. He gave that kind of impression.
So did this guy do it?
Yeah,
did he put his arm in it?
Yeah. This cat made hamburger out of his hand. And, you know, after that, you know, they wrapped his hand up in a towel, what was left of it. I don't know, much left of it, a couple of towels, bleeding all over the place like a stuffed pig. And Joey says, you take him to the nearest hospital, drop him off, and tell him what you got to tell him. And the thing we had to tell him was, listen, we don't care what you say. We don't care if you say you got this caught in a meat grinder. I don't care if you tell me you got it caught in your own zipper. But, you know, you don't say what happened. You go in there, get fixed up, and you never even think about our neighborhood again or anybody in it.
That's New York-style justice for you. When we come back, Tony, we're going to talk about how you got into the escort service business and how it brought you to Las Vegas. Stick around, everyone. I'm George Knapp on Coast to Coast AM.